And with that, I'm really happy to introduce Chue. I know Neil since 2007. I met him the first time in Edinburgh, and he's the director of the Software Sustainability Institute in the UK. He's one of the driving forces of the RSE movement in the UK and worldwide. So we are very happy to have him here. And with that, I give it to you.
Thank you very much, Sandra, and thank you to Sandra and Julia and the entire organizing team for putting on this amazing conference. I mean, it is, isn't it? Give them a round of applause. So I'm here to give a keynote, and I gave it this title, whatever, 4 or 5 months back, where I said, Research Software Engineering, from what and where to why and how. And the last 4 or 5 months have been me trying to work out why on earth I called it this title, and what on earth I meant by what and where to why and how. So I thought what I'd do is I kind of go on a little bit of a history tour, looking at the last 10 years of the research software engineering movement, and then where I think we're going for the next 10 years. I thought I'd start right at the very beginning. So see, this is me. This is me when I was about 2 years old. I was a bit keen to explore the world. I explored it a little bit too well, fell off a ladder and broke my arm. And so clearly you can see at this point, what I'm going to be is a doctor, right? Yeah. So my career is basically a pursuit of how I can become the thing that I wanted to be when I was a kid. So I took the path which was quite standard to become a doctor. You go off and work in particle physics, and you try and make sure you understand how all of the really small interactions work, so that when you do fracture your bone, you know how to fix it. From there, I kind of went off and went into AI, although at that point AI was expert systems, so it wasn't really cool, and I was applying it to fishing trawlers. So that also wasn't very cool. So then I kind of went on and went, what could be more cool than working on AI for fishing trawlers? And I went, databases. It's clearly databases. So for a long time, I worked in product management of software to look at how we can basically do SQL queries better. It's a great job. But then after that, I kind of started thinking, why are we doing this? You know, what is it that we are trying to achieve through all of this different development of software in research with researchers in both academia and industry? And so then I went on and worked for an organization called the Open Middleware Infrastructure Institute, which really planted the seed in my mind for where I am today with the Software Sustainability Institute, where we've been trying to find out what is it that makes us use software and develop software better. Because we believe that better software leads to better research, right? Show of hands, who thinks better software leads to better research? Yay, okay, I'm in the right crowd. So why am I telling you all of this? So there's a little thing when you're doing any piece of creative writing where what you're trying to do is at the start of any story is you are trying to build some expectations about what's to come. And then it's your job as an author to start meeting those expectations and then subvert them in some sort of way. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to give you a talk that's structured in 5 parts. I'm going to put up a slightly vague and ambiguous quote in front of each of them, and I'm going to get you to try and piece together what it is that I'm talking about. Are you in for it? It's going to be a ride. Okay, so let's go back and let's go to a period that was not too long ago, but feels a long time ago. Because I've been really, really privileged. I grew up in a time when personal computers were just becoming a thing. I've seen the growth of things like the World Wide Web, GPS, smartphones. It really has been an amazing time to be someone who is really, really into technology. But for us, the reason why we're here today in this US-RSE conference is because we care about research software. And I want you to take you back to a day that it's a sunny Thursday afternoon. So, you know, it's a sunny Tuesday morning. It's about the same. We're in Oxford, and there's a workshop taking place that's being run by my organization, the Software Sustainability Institute. And what you can see here, because at least until Google sunsets another product, we still have all of the information up on screen, is the same sort of thing that we've got today in this conference. You see the set of breakout sessions, the parallel sessions that are going on. And if you have got really good eyesight, I don't have really good eyesight, so I realize I can't even see what is on the screen in front of me. But if you've got good eyesight, you'll see that the top of those discussion sessions is all about professionalizing the sort of what would become the research software engineering movement. If you kind of look across a bit to the right-hand side, you'll see that it wasn't even the most popular session that day. However, thanks to the Internet Archive, I've got this picture here. This picture is the only known photo from that discussion session where the term research software engineer was first discussed. So, do you know what that means? It means I was in the room where it happened. And it wasn't really as exciting as that. So the reality is much more boring. So these are the actual notes from that session. At the time, we basically had this policy of emailing everything, so you can find on the relevant Google group the notes from that session. And some of these things are things that still come up just now, but the one that kind of stuck and the one that made the community what it was today is that we needed a name, because the challenge, at least in the UK, and I think also in other countries around the world, was that the first step to recognition is giving things a name so that people outside of the community can recognize them. There were lots of other names discussed. If you go back into the notes, you'll see all of the failed attempts until we eventually said, research software engineer, that's probably good enough for us. However, that's not really the whole story, because just naming something is only the start. And whilst that discussion was undoubtedly important in the history of the research software engineering movement, just going back to one moment in time, that inception point, it belies all of the different contributions and effort that goes in from the entire community. So that was a start, but that was a start with 7 men, to be frank, sitting in a room pontificating about what needed to be done. But what's happened since then is we've had people from all parts of the community, from all different backgrounds, coming together to try and understand what it is to make sure that people understand what we do and to take and drive this profession onwards. Great. So that's the end of the talk, right? All we've got to do here is name something, and then everything is better, and we can all kind of go and do our jobs, be really well paid, have all of our bosses recognize the work we do, right? So no, unfortunately, it's not like that. Even 11 years on, there are still challenges, and one of the challenges is around kind of like understanding what a research software engineer does. Back then, we thought it was really simple. When we were in that room, we thought all research software engineers, they just look like us, right? And so when I was thinking in these 4 months about what to do in this talk, I think one of the things that really resonated with me was that when I was talking to all of the different research software engineers around the kind of country, I didn't know what a research software engineer did. I realized that there were lots of different ways of perceiving what a research software engineer does. I clearly think that what I do is magic, and I can just kind of like whip up a script, and it will immediately solve all of the analysis problems that I want to kind of like do. I think that honestly, my parents who did want me to be a doctor think that what I do is just something out of a movie set. They haven't actually seen The Matrix, but if they did, that's probably what they think I do. But realistically, what is it that we do? I probably just ask questions in Google and see what Stack Overflow answer comes up. But what is it that we do? And if we'd been doing this talk a year ago, this question would have been really, really hard. But it's fine, because what do we have? We have the world's greatest mansplainer to tell us what we do, right? So what does ChatGPT say that a research software engineer does? Okay. That looks pretty good, right? Seems reasonable. Yeah, it's okay. I mean, I've certainly seen people doing this sort of stuff. But is this really who we are? Does this really define what research software engineering is and does and should be? So that's one way of looking at things. But we are research software engineers. What are we good at? We are really good at analysis. And what we can look at is find out what a model US-RSE is. You know, what should you aspire? Oh no, wait, got that wrong. We can find out what a modal US-RSE is. So we've got this thing called the International RSE Survey. And one of the things that this does is collect information from research software engineers like yourself from across the world. And what we can do is we can look and see what are the types of category that come up as being over 50% of respondents saying. So let's see, what is the modal US-RSE? So has a PhD in the sciences, probably works for a university, again in the sciences, is on a permanent contract. That's good. Uses GNU and Linux, uses Python, uses Git, uses open source all the time, has an ORCID, is named as a co-author. Bet you didn't know that. Is male, is not Hispanic. Bus factor of 1 to 2. This is better than the global average, which is 1. And this is funny because clearly this survey came out before the US-RSE conference, has been to an RSE conference. So is this what you look like? If you look around the room, is this what you look like, the modal RSE? It's probably not, because I see a lot more diversity in this room than this set of analysis from the survey gives. And I think that's one of the things that really excites me about the research software engineering community. That, and also when you look at the data, the one thing that US-RSEs said they wanted to get out of going along to RSE conferences was networking. So it is really great to see you all here. So that's three different ways of looking at what a research software engineer is. And I think the view of what a research software engineer has changed, not just in our community, but also outside of our community. So this is probably the most iconic research software related picture of the last 10 years, probably. It is probably the only picture that your non-RSE friends and family would recognize as being something to do with your job. So the question here is, hands up who thinks that Dr. Bowman is a research software engineer. Hands up who thinks that she is not a research software engineer. Hands up who thinks that we shouldn't be asking this question because it's up to her to define what she is. Right. So this is part of the issue, is that what a research software engineer is and what a research software engineer does is not fitting into any one particular box. And with my apologies to my colleague, Simon Hetrick, he came up with this axis to start off with when we were doing the early days of the research software engineering movement, where you had software engineers at one end of a spectrum and researchers at another end. You had researchers who developed a bit of code, and then you had research software engineers in the middle, where what was happening was that they were sitting in between the two. They had more knowledge of research than a software engineer, but they were developing code rather than publications. However, the problem with this axis is it's way too clean. So you can have research software engineers who sit within a central team, or you can have research software engineers who are embedded in a research group. You can have people who are specializing in all different aspects of what it means to be a research software engineer. And you can have research software engineers who are working in all different domains and fields. We are a complex and diverse set of people. This is what we do, and this is who we are. And when we were at the Swansea UK Research Software Engineering Conference, I was struck by just how many different ways in which research software engineers interacted with the different research groups and teams that they are working with. And this is who we are. This is all of the different people who we are. We are people who are right in the middle of the community. We're people who are on the fringes. We are people who think they belong and call themselves RSEs. And we are the people who are still a little bit worried and not quite sure whether they fit in. And there are so many different stories that I really can't tell you about them all. And it's again lucky that we are in the 2020s, because what we do have is we have podcasts. And so if you want to find out more about what an RSE is and does, and what the diversity of all of the people working in research software engineering and in the different areas alongside it, I really recommend that you listen to some of the podcasts. Developer Stories, Code for Thought. I know Peter Schmidt is somewhere in the room, who's the host of Code for Thought, to find out all of the different ways in which people are doing research software engineering. So, are we finished? Well, not quite. So I've talked about what we are and who we are, but I haven't really talked about what makes us do the things that we do and how we should do it. So let's go back to that lovely slide there. So I told you about my career and the way that I had gone from wanting to be a doctor through particle physics to where I am. But that doesn't really tell all of the story. And for most of us, we have lots of different strands to our stories. So for me, if you look at my LinkedIn page, you'll see that I have multiple strands. And all of them kind of fit in with the work that I do. I was a projectionist once, so I used to do film projection. That parlayed into a career where I work at festivals. Is this useful to my research software engineering career? Absolutely. It taught me how to understand how to solve problems. It taught me how to, as an introvert, and a very shy introvert, to come up and speak to you on a stage like this. And I think what I've realized is everything that I have done is actually helpful in my role in research software engineering. And one of the things that I think this has really taught me is to look outside of what we're doing to other areas to work out what it is that we should be doing ourselves. And so I'm going to say one thing here. Sustainability. This is the thing that the Software Sustainability Institute was set up to do. It's the thing that I've been trying to work out what it means to me and what it means to this community through the last 13 years. And that has changed as it's gone. And I think the one thing I have realized is that loads of people use the word sustainability, but what does it really mean? What does this word actually tell us? So I'm going to take a little segue. This is kind of like a very, very brief callback. One of those photos there was me kind of with a screenwriter called Andrea Gibb, and this is something that she posted to try and give a sense of what it means to be a writer. And as a writer, what you can see in this photo is on the left there is a pile of notebooks, and those notebooks represent all of the work that she has done to develop scripts that never made it to screen. In the middle is a pile that represents the ones that actually made it to screen. And on the right are the ones that are still in development. What this shows is that for any creative endeavor, like being a writer or being a research software engineer, there is a huge amount of craft that is going on that just remains unseen, because all people see is that little set of notebooks in the middle. And that's a problem, because if we only look and see what makes it out there, then what we're doing is we're undervaluing the entirety of our profession. And that's a challenge when it comes to funding. And one of the things that I have been looking at is what happens when we look at the other parts of the world in other areas. How do we ensure that we properly value and fund the things that really are required by a large proportion of the world? And one way of looking at it comes from basically water security. So there is a concept around providing water, clean water to people, that is called the 3T model: tariffs, taxes, and transfers. And so what this model says is that there are lots of different people who need to pay to make sure that water gets to the people who need to use it. So some is tariffs. That's the stuff that you and I pay to our water companies to make sure that we get service. There are taxes. That's the sort of thing that governments pay to make sure that companies can provide the infrastructure. And then there are transfers. This is what happens when one country realizes it needs to help out another country to make sure that the world has water. So how does that translate to what we're doing here with research software? So the taxes bit is the easiest bit. The taxes bit is the part where the national government is giving money to funders, and those funders are paying for research software. The tricky bit is that the only set of people who should be paying for research software? And in any model like this, the answer is no. So what we need to work out as we go forward is who else is responsible for the paying of, for supporting software. What role do users have? What role do universities and research performing organizations have? What role do we have in one country to support the development of software that's being used in another country? Because research is international, just like water is international. And if we don't support that cooperation across borders, then we're going to run out of money, and we're going to run out of software very soon. So that got me thinking. I wondered what I could do to try and bring this all together, to come up with a way in which all of us could understand not just who we are and what we are, but also what we need to do and how we should be doing it. And the one thing I was looking at was the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, because obviously I do not know what the word sustainable means. So what I do is I Google it, and it comes up with this set of different objectives. So the UN Sustainable Development Goals were a collection of different things that help organizations, governments, individuals sometimes understand how they can frame the work that they're doing in terms of things that we need to be doing for the good of humanity and the planet. So the question I kind of gave myself was, what would that look like if we did the same thing for the work that we do? Could we come up with a set of research software principles where we recognize that the sustainable development of research software is multifaceted, that there's not one set of rules or tools or guidelines that we can use, that it couldn't be tackled just by a single project or organization. So it let us align the work that we were doing, and to really kind of get to that end goal of why are we doing things? We're doing things not because we want to make better research software. We're doing it because we want to ensure that there is better research done, so that we, our children, our friends' children, and the all of the generations that follow have a better life that they can live. So here are 9 principles, 3 sets of 3, that I think we should be using to kind of align the development of research software. So the first ones are all about helping your team. There is an existing set of principles called the FAIR principles: findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, which are about making sure that your software is reusable by as many different people as possible. One of the things that I've heard come up in the conference is we often don't really think about security, or at least we don't think about security enough. And I think a big challenge for us is making sure that we respect data privacy and assume that at some point our software is going to be attacked or broken. And then the third one for helping your team is being maintainable. So how can we make sure that the software is easy to adapt and to correct faults? And that's really a lot of what we've been talking about over the course of the last day. So that's about helping your team. I also think that you should be helping your peers, the people that you're working with, the researchers, the policymakers, and everyone else who participates and engages in developing and delivering research. So some of that is about reproducibility, making sure that you can enable trust in the research through the software you develop. Some of it is about recognition, so rewarding all of those roles that develop the next generation of researchers. And some of it is about being inclusive. And it was really great to see the keynote by Marianne Young yesterday. That's really about ensuring that we can be we can be supportive and make accessible this profession to a really broad community. And then finally, I think ultimately what we're trying to do as research software engineers is help the world. We need to make sure that the software we build is responsible, that we ensure that we reduce our impact on the environment, that we're open and global, that we recognize that what we do isn't limited to one country. And finally, to remember that we are all humans here in this strange loop, and make sure that the software that we are developing is unbiased, ethical, and ultimately in support of what we want to do as the human race. So I'm going to leave you with that set of principles. I'm going to say a big thank you again to everyone who has helped me develop the ideas in this talk. And at this point, I would like to recognize the wonderful set of team that I have. It's a very long list of names. I can't go through them all, but one of them is here today, Alex Nenadic, our training lead. So please do come and speak to either of us if you want to find out more about what the Software Sustainability Institute does. Thank you very much. Thank you. I can see a question over there. This is a little bit like those kind of like puzzles where you're trying to find the where's Waldo?
It's a great talk. Thank you. So in my mind, the question that came up when you were talking about how to handle your team is, what do you see a career of a research software engineer look like? Right? So I've been a research software engineer for over 3 years. What would be my career in the next 20 years? And what is your mind thinking about a whole career as a software?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Yep. Yeah, so the question was basically, what do you see the career of a research software engineer being, and how do you see the progression? So in the UK, we've had research software engineers for a little bit longer, and we're starting to see more diversity of career paths. So the classic career path is that you come in as a junior research software engineer, then you become a research software engineer, senior research software engineer, and then it splits. And at present, what you've had a split between basically management or technical. So at my own organization, we have around about 90 research software engineers, and the split is pretty much you either start becoming a project manager or a product manager, which is the route that I took. I started in development and then went up that path, or you go up the architect path where you become a technical authority, and you're kind of giving advice and you're leading the technical side of things. Where I think it's going is that we're starting to see more splits, because in some sense, those two career paths, which are now becoming more common in the UK, both require leadership. And what they don't recognize is perhaps specialism. And so what I think we're starting to see now is also some paths that allow you to become the expert in an area without necessarily assuming leadership roles in an organization. The challenge here is that it's, as I'm sure you've probably found out, it's quite hard for new career paths to get established in organizations. I was talking to someone yesterday about one of the things that we did in the UK. And so in the UK at universities, the people who develop these career paths are typically the head of the human resources department in the university. And then that gets passed on to the senior leadership at the university to approve. And so one of the things we did as the research software engineering community in the UK was to organize a panel of the people from HR who were writing those career paths and drafting them, so that the community could see what was possible and what was not possible at that time. And that's maybe something that would be interesting to do here as well, is to find out who is it that actually defines the career paths, and then having that conversation to find out what's possible and what's required by this community.
Any further questions?
There's one to the right-hand side.
Thank you. This has been great. The question kind of gets the whole reason I'm here. So I'm Caleb Cooper from GitLab, and sorry, I'm a little out of breath. The question I have is, how can companies that build products for software developers help support research software engineering? Other than discounts and free offerings, which we do, but other things, right, more involved things that are more involved in the community. Thank you.
Thanks. So the question was, how can companies that develop tools and infrastructure for software engineering help the research software engineering community beyond just kind of giving discounts and freebies? And I think that's again a really great question, because in some sense, from my perception, what we do as research software engineers often looks very similar to what software developers and software engineers do. So maybe there's no difference, but then at the same time, there are things that do make a difference. And a lot of these are to do with the things that are valued. What are the outputs that are valued? So one kind of key difference tends to be that in industry, when you're doing software development, the thing that you're trying to create is a product that delivers value in terms of money, basically. It's creating a product that will make you money. In research, it's slightly different in that what you're looking to do is create software that either produces research results, or it gives you a higher reputation. And so I think these different economic incentives might come down to the sorts of differences in what we need from industry and where we can have this cooperation and collaboration. So as one example, myself and a number of others who are in this room have worked for a long time in software citation and trying to give the recognition for research software engineers to improve their reputation. And one thing that's happened recently is we've seen some of the infrastructures, GitHub, Zenodo, and so on, make this easier by simply putting in functionality that lets you get a citation for a piece of software by clicking on a button. And I think it's that kind of stuff that will actually help in the long run, is to understand what are the slight differences in the ways that research software engineers are using the tools and why they're using them. And actually, I feel slightly that I'm the wrong person to be asking this question of, and I'm sure you'll get some great answers from the rest of the room about what it is that would really make a difference for them day to day because of the differences in why we are developing software.
Thanks, Neil. That was a great talk. So you outlined your own career trajectory and how you found yourself in this space.
Yeah.
And everyone kind of has a unique story there, but it seems like early on in the US, people largely were in the domain science or something like that, and they realized they cared about software and they learned about software and they migrated in that direction.
Mm.
A little bit more lately, I see people from software engineering and computer science backgrounds kind of reaching out towards the domain science. And
yeah,
you're a little farther along in the UK with people, you know, maybe charting out their career path or choosing it as a career path, not just kind of being where you ended up because of your interests. How do you see that progressing going forward? And how do you think we're going to churn out the next generation of RSEs most effectively?
Yeah, so the question there was around, I think, the different routes at which people enter the RSE profession. One thing I'll start off with, which is an interesting thing I noticed when I was looking at the US statistics from the RSE survey compared with that from the UK, and that is in the UK, most of the people who are RSEs had a physics background. In the US, there are a lot of people who have a physics background, but actually most RSEs, according to the survey, come from a CS background. So I think in some ways we're actually moving on slightly different paths in the UK and the US. However, the things that I have noticed which are changing in the UK is outside of physics and CS. Where are people coming from? And we're starting to see a lot more people come from, for instance, the biological and medical sciences, where there are already a very large cohort of software users there who have been developing code. And again, it is probably still the root of realizing that they care more about the code than they care about the papers that's driving this. But we're seeing a lot more people coming from the biological sciences. What we still haven't managed to do in the UK, but I think it's coming down the road very soon, is basically making it appeal to people who are at the early stages of their university career. So at undergraduate level, maybe even as you're trying to pick which undergraduate course you're doing. Because again, a conversation I had yesterday was, we've seen in the last 10, 15 years, that data science has kind of become something that people understand as a career path, to be a data scientist. Perhaps it's because data scientist is quite vague. What is a data scientist? You can make of that what you would like. And so I think we need to do the same thing for research software engineer. It's why do people want to get into this? I actually think they want to get into this because they're still interested in staying in the research space, but they really love working with software. And there are a lot of people who are coming out of high school who would fit that criteria. The question is how to make it an appealing career choice. And I think for that, part of it is more courses to understand what you need to do to get that career path. Part of it is more opportunities. We're still in that period where we are ramping up and hiring more and more people like this. Part of it is industry as well, so that there are equal opportunities to be a research software engineer in a national lab, in a university, or in industry. But mostly, I think it's about us talking to people who are interested and making it sound exciting. Because ultimately, you know, why do people want to be rocket scientists? It's because there is this vision of this kind of grand unknown. And as research software engineers, we are always working with researchers who are exploring grand unknowns. It's just that they might be very, very small ones, they might be very hidden ones. And yeah, I think it's about marketing now. And that's what we're starting to try and understand in the UK.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that for someone who maybe from as an undergrad, you have wanted to pursue a profession like this, but never on the drug path for it. My question for you is whether it's important for organizations to differentiate between software engineers and research software engineers. Again, my organization is one type of work for all of us, and I think some of us are more formally software engineers in terms of kind of being at some sciences.
Yeah, so the question there was around, I guess, whether organizations need to have both software engineers and research software engineers, or whether it's just one title. So this is a kind of personal opinion. I know that other people in the community hold very different opinions. So 13 years ago, we thought that what we needed was a single title for research software engineers. However, as it's gone on, I am of the opinion that instead what we are doing is that we have lots of different people who are involved in research software engineering. And so actually having a proliferation of titles is a really good thing, as long as we recognize what are the roles that those people are doing, whether they are working on the kind of like the infrastructure layer, or whether they are working on the user interfaces. It's all research software engineering. I mentioned that I'm in an organization, EPCC, which effectively has been doing research software engineering for 40 years. We don't use the title research software engineer. So we have titles like applications developer, architect, group manager, but all of these people are still research software engineers, or they're doing research software engineering. So I think in terms of the title, I'd like to maybe see us move on from the discussion of what titles we should be having to what roles and what career paths we should be having. The other interesting question that yours brings up is, should we have software engineers as that slide I stole from Simon as kind of people who are really only considering the software development side of things and aren't interacting with the researchers? Is that useful to a research performing organization? And I think that's one that's still up for debate. Is it a good thing to have software engineers working alongside research software engineers? And I don't know that. I'd be really interested to hear if people have opinions on that.
Hi, thanks for your talk. I wanted to follow up on kind of the question about, the career path shift and getting earlier in the process with marketing and all of that. I think is great and needed. I do wonder what your thought is on how do we protect against getting a very narrow view of RSEs as it becomes a defined career opportunity. Like, I think that all of us in this room would say, we have some really roundabout ways that got here.
Yeah.
And that's what has made us like well-rounded in a sense to be able to bring our different experiences to the table, whether we came from industry or whether we came from research, and we all kind of learn from one another. And is that a danger as we start to develop a on-ramp for the career that we don't actually get some of those diverse experiences coming in?
Yeah, that's a really good point you make. So the point was that as we kind of go forward, we might end up narrowing the field by basically looking just for a very narrow set of experiences that define what a research software engineer is. And so, yeah, I think here one way of looking at it is to look at the way that other professions have been trying to kind of broaden out from this idea that there is a set of experiences that make you good at that profession. And instead, I think, move to more the idea of what are the competencies that you need to have to thrive in that profession. And so there's really good work that's being led by Dave Horsfall in the UK on an RSE competency toolkit, and also in Germany by the name has now kind of gone out of my mind. But there's work in both Germany and the UK to look at not, you know, what degree should you have had and what first job should you have had, but instead, what is the experience that you need to have demonstrated to be a good RSE? And I think by focusing on competencies, it helps us here, because I've talked to people who are great RSEs who've come from a background in theology, or who started off by applying their work solely in the arts and humanities. So I think your experience is what gives you your unique insight, and we really, really want to make sure that we have people from as broad and as diverse a set of experiences. But understanding what competencies you need allows you to understand, for instance, what training you need to do to successfully develop your RSE career.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for the talk. I wanted to follow up on the previous question as well. So lately I've seen notice, like whenever they're hiring for research software engineers, then teams who are domain experts or have domain experts seem to be willing to hire software engineers and teach them research, rather than be willing to hire researchers and teach them software engineering. So as you talked about how everyone from diverse backgrounds came to make the field what it is today, how do you think someone who is trying to break in as a researcher into the software engineering field and make a research software engineer, what would your advice be to them?
Yeah, so the question there was what advice you might have for a researcher trying to break into the research software engineering field, given that it seems that in some places it's easier to teach software engineers about the research rather than teach a researcher about software engineering. I would say that the one good thing here is that there are now so many different ways to learn the software engineering skills and to be able to demonstrate those. If you'd been starting this 20 years ago, it's much harder. There were fewer places teaching software engineering principles. Now you have everything from the carpentries teaching you the foundations through to a wonderful sets of online courses allowing you to kind of pick up more intermediate skills. You also have a lot of different ways of demonstrating your software engineering experience by participating, for instance, in open source communities. The one thing that's I think interesting there is actually, in most cases, you probably want people coming from both sides. You want to be hiring a mix of software engineers who learn about the research and researchers who learn about the software engineering. And part of the problem, I think, is around many groups and projects not having enough resources to be able to hire a properly diverse team with a complementary set of skills, rather than kind of going, we need one person who can do everything. And that one person who can do everything then becomes this odd hero RSE, which I think is not helpful for our profession. So I would say now, take a look and see what it is your projects in your area, the area that you want to break into, are using. For instance, what languages do they tend to use? What sort of layer of the stack are they? And then seek out the training courses that you find there, because I think it's never been easier to pick up software engineering skills. I think it's just about finding out how you then demonstrate them so that you get that higher.
Thank you so much. I know there were more questions. We are a little bit over the time, so leave it around until tomorrow. So approach it directly.
Yeah.
And thank you a lot again for our great talk.